The International Monetary Fund has published its 2024 World Economic Outlook, taking its GDP growth projections for South Africa this year even lower. And it's now at just 0.9%. Projections for 2025 have also been reduced to 1.2%. Now, South Africa has been suffering from multiple crises around power and water supply and other logistical issues. The power supply issue has improved, and load shedding has also been suspended for an extended period now. Various companies are cutting back outlook forecasts, and that's due to the logistics nightmare that's been caused by Transnet and its failing infrastructure. Now, while the outlook for South Africa is gloomy, the global economy is expected to fare much better. Now, is South Africa heading in the right direction in addressing some of the major challenges? To help us answer this question is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, Busi Mavuso. Busi, thanks so much for speaking to us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Sakina, and thank you for inviting me.
So if we look at that economic outlook as it's now been revised downwards once more by the International Monetary Fund, it does make for very gloomy reading, but also this is nothing new. If you look at the rate of our growth, our economic growth in this country, it's been at crisis level for some time now.
It has. So it's definitely nothing new. And I think we have been on this low growth trajectory for quite some time as a country. And I think the worst thing for us, Sakina, is that as much as we may think that this is still a positive number and therefore it is some form of growth, in real terms, South Africa is not growing. This number is negative if you consider it in terms of the GDP per capita, given that the population growth is outpacing it. Remember, our population growth is currently sitting at 1.6%, and this trend of economic growth being surpassed by population growth has been like that since 2013. So as a country, we have now crowned a decade of negative per capita growth, considering, as you earlier said, that we actually posted 8.6% growth in 2023. And to your point, what really puts this performance into context is where the world is, 3.2% for the global growth, and sub-Saharan Africa even performing better at 3.8% and 4% next year. But when you look at why the world and sub-Saharan Africa is where it is, you will see that there's been a commitment to the reform agenda. The performance that you're seeing in sub-Saharan African countries reflects difficult reforms that have been implemented over many years, which have now finally culminated in noticeable economic results. So we need patience, we need political will, we need a great deal of maturity on all sides in putting the country first and really committing to driving these reforms, which will only pay off in several years. Because, Sakina, when you look at it, this is the only way that we're actually going to guarantee sustained economic growth. The unemployment grant of 350, unfortunately, is not going to be sustainable. The EPWP, is not going to be sustainable. All these interventions, which are actually a means to, or rather an end in itself, are not going to be sustainable. So the reform agenda, and I really hope that we're going to have political will. I really hope that post the 29th of May, the 7th administration and whatever government that comes into power will actually continue South Africa on the same trajectory of ensuring that the reform agenda takes, the primary spot, on the agenda.
So this reform agenda, what fruit has it borne so far?
When you look at it, just look at the work that we have done as business and government in the past 8 months, and whatever has been done so far, we have seen, and I know a lot of people are actually skeptical. They are saying, is the load shedding really, sustainable, or the lack thereof, or are we actually going to be hit with stage 6? After the elections. But when you look at the numbers, Sakina, you will see that we have seen a 61% less load shedding. over the past year, and we have actually added 6 gigawatts new generation onto the grid. When you look at what we've done from a ports and logistics perspective, you will see that there is a 36% reduction in waiting time to anchor container vessels and 45% fewer vessels anchored outside of the Durban ports. Remember, in November last year, we were talking about, was it 80,000 containers that are actually currently sitting at the ports, but through the roadmap that has actually been put in place, that was actually adopted by Cabinet in November and is currently sitting in Parliament, you are seeing improvements. We are not where we should be. There are a lot of companies who are still bypassing the Durban ports and are going to Mozambique, but there is progress. We've also seen about a 65% reduction in criminal incidents on the Northern Corridor, which enables national coal supply and enables us to work on the modernization of the Gauteng 10111 command center that we're actually busy with. So there is progress, and the numbers don't lie, Sakina, because the numbers are actually telling us that we actually are moving in the right direction. So there is results that we're actually seeing that might not be affecting you and I, in the form of the levels of economic growth that we'd like to see, levels of economic growth that will actually make sure that the issues of youth unemployment, the issues of the 42% unemployment in terms of the expanded definition, where you have more people that are unemployed than those that are employed in all the provinces except Gauteng and the Western Cape, is corrected. But the path and the trajectory that South Africa is on is a positive one, and it is a sustainable one, more importantly.
And I'm glad you touched on all those key figures, because that begs the question, we are on the right track for whom? To whose benefit? Because if the unemployment rates are still as staggeringly high as they are, how does that actually bring comfort to South Africa? How does that address instability that could arise as a result of that? It doesn't, take much to prove where we could potentially end up if we look at what happened in July 2021. South Africans need to get working. Why are we not getting that right? Why do we have the majority of our youth unemployed? That recipe for disaster is sitting and staring us in the face, Busi.
Sakina, the disaster that we're on as a country at the moment has been in the making for the past 15 years. We have taken more than 10 years to hollow out South Africa Inc. We have taken more than 15 years to literally ensure that the SOEs are the ground zero for siphoning funds out of the state. We have taken that much time to actually weaken the criminal justice system. I heard earlier on you were talking about what the NPA is doing and their results and whatever the case is. And the reality of the situation is that the state capture project was so deep, was so wide, and it was actually so high. And it's still very much entrenched in a whole lot of these institutions. The reason why corruption levels at government still continue to be at the levels that they are is precisely, because it's going to take us time to undo the damage that we actually self-inflicted over the past 15 years. The reason why we are failing to implement at the right speed, some of the solutions that were actually put so beautifully down on paper, it's because over the 15 years we've been hiring on loyalty and not on capability. So those are issues that are actually going to take time to solve. So if you're asking the question of, these reforms are actually going to benefit who? They are going to benefit 62 million South Africans. Because when you look at the value chain of how you fix the economy, Sakina, we can't do it in any other way. If our target is youth unemployment, and unemployment broadly, we need to start where we are starting. Because remember, a whole lot of companies at the moment, when you listen to their annual results presentations, they are talking about how the difficult trading environment in South Africa at the moment is actually a disincentive for them to continue to invest. They're actually saying that the revenues are not what they should be, the profits are not what they should be. And if they are seeing less demand, as is actually manifested by the revenues and the profits, it means they're actually going to cut jobs. So you can't run business in an environment where you sit with 10 hours of load shedding a day. You can't run a manufacturing company, Sakina, in an environment where you can't take your goods to market, where when you actually have to get your goods out of market. And we're sitting here saying we're actually leading export-led growth, right? So how are you going to export if Durban and Cape Town ports are actually dysfunctional? You have to bypass the South African ports and you have to go to Mauritius and Mozambique. It is unsustainable. The high levels of crime and corruption. So fixing the environment and the reforms that are being implemented, Sakina, is the right place to start, because we can't start anywhere else. You fix that, business confidence goes up. If business confidence goes up, investment comes in. If investment comes in, the economy starts growing at the right level, not this dismal 0.9% that we're actually seeing. To make a dent on unemployment, you at least, very minimum, need about 3%. So with investment coming in, you get the economy growing at 3% levels and higher, and then only then can you actually include the majority of the citizens of this country who are not participating in the economic mainstream to participate in the economic mainstream. But that entire value chain, Sakina, which leads to dealing with unemployment, starts with the reform agenda. So we can't start anywhere else. It has to start here. And I think this is the hardest work that but it is.
But what is it going to take for business to buy into that reform agenda? Because, and I want to state that business is being disingenuous by now foregrounding the issues that we have with load shedding and logistics at the ports and water supply, all these other service delivery issues. And the reason I'm saying business is disingenuous is because before that, they were still not investing in the South African economy when they were sitting on trillions of rands as business and not investing it in this economy, because even then, before we had all the load shedding and other issues, business still wanted some sort of reforms that would somehow make them comfortable to invest in the South African economy. So the question is, at what point will they be ready? And how much are they sitting on in terms of reserves? Why should everyone else from the rest of the world come with their foreign direct investment into the South African economy when South African businesses themselves are sitting on their reserves and not investing it in this economy?
Sakina, when you look at the progress that we have made in as far as the reform agenda is concerned, business is the one who is actually investing in that reform agenda. The business-government partnership, these are CEOs. I think we're about 15 aside, 15 of us representing business, and I think about 15 representing government. This is an initiative that is actually led by South African CEOs. The NICOM that needed 100 million rands to set up and to capacitate Sakina, that 100 million rands came from BLSA. Came from business. 25 million of it came from BLSA. The 120 million that was actually required to set up the NLCC, which has produced the roadmap that we have as a country, that 120 million came from business. 25 million of it came from BLSA. The 350 experts that are currently sitting at Eskom and Transnet to fix those challenges, that has actually come from BLSA, from business. The 170 million funding that has actually been raised to make sure that the initiative that is being led by Business for South Africa to drive this very reform agenda comes from business. So if that is not commitment to the reform agenda, I don't know what is. We realize as the business community that the challenges that we're facing, never mind their genesis, the challenges that we're facing are not government's challenges, they are South African challenges, because we too are impacted. The social instability that you actually see, in the country, you rightfully talk about the July 2021 anarchy. Business doesn't want to see a recurrence of that again, which is why, we are actually working very hard in as far as this is concerned. When you see the progress that has been made, Sakina, in some of the other reforms, who has been funding the Operation Vulindlela unit? Ever since inception in 2021, the OV unit has been capacitated and funded by business in this country. So there is a lot of work that is actually being done in the engine room, to fix the environment, within which we are operating, and to actually make sure, that the foundation within which South Africa is standing is actually being made solid. So we probably maybe are not talking about it, strongly enough as business in terms of what we're doing. We'll probably maybe come out when we talk about what is actually not going right, but we are actually holding hands with government. The current water crisis that we're actually experiencing, it is business who is jumping up and down, talking to the Department of Water and Sanitation, saying, how do we actually help, with the work that actually needs to be done? So business is definitely committed. We realize that our fortunes as business are really tied to the fortunes of South Africa. We realize that business cannot continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty, because if South Africans don't have the disposable income, because they are not working, if they don't have the disposable income to come into our businesses and buy our goods and services, then you actually don't grow as a business. Then we are put in this difficult situation where you actually have to retrench people and actually close shop. And the investments that we've already done in this country are very significant, Sakina. So it is not going to be an easy decision to actually close shop and go and set up somewhere else. When business invests, it is normally a long game, and a decision to therefore divest outside of the country is not taken lightly. And we are not going to divest. We are committed to this country. And if we were not, we wouldn't be doing everything that we're actually doing. So believe it or not, Sakina, we are actually working with government, we're holding hands with them, and we're actually saying, let's make sure that South Africa works, not just for business, but for the 62 million South Africans.
Busi Mavuso, I'm so loath that we are out of time, because I'm so enjoying this conversation with you, and hopefully we'll have opportunity, maybe add more guests and have these conversations, talk about what is actually happening. I still want to know, how much do you have in reserve as Business South Africa? How much are you sitting on? I want to know those things. I want to know about those 350 executives that you talk about that have been sent to Eskom. What is the problem? Why aren't they able to fix all of this? So there are so many questions, and I'm hoping we'll have another opportunity to talk about this. Crime, the Zondo Commission, business. What has business done to look at the actors that were involved in state capture from business's perspective? So all of those things I hope we'll have time to address. But thanks so much, Busi Mavuso, Chief Executive Officer of Business Leadership South Africa.